The night it all exploded, the house looked deceptively peaceful from the outside, golden lights spilling through the windows, the faint hum of a TV in the background. But inside, you could cut the tension with a knife. Dad stood in the hallway, arms crossed, his expression cold and smug. My brother lounged on the couch behind him, wearing my old hoodie, the one I bought him when he first moved in temporarily. "Your room's his now," Dad said flatly. "You can move your things to the laundry room." For a second, I thought he was joking. But when I glanced at Mom, her silence confirmed everything. The walls closed in, the smell of detergent, the hiss of the washer. That was where I belonged now. My brother grinned like he'd just won something. I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I just nodded. Slowly, because I already knew. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of their reckoning. They thought this would break me, but they had no idea what was coming. Before all of this, life in our house ran like clockwork, mostly because I was the one keeping it ticking. Every morning, I woke up before everyone else. I'd start the coffee, pack Dad's lunch, check on the bills, and leave a note on the counter reminding Mom of her prescriptions. Then, I'd head to work, the same job I'd held for 4 years. Bookkeeping for a small real estate firm. Quiet, steady, nothing flashy. I didn't complain. I liked order. I liked peace. That was before temporary turned into permanent. When my brother Evan called one evening saying he needed a place to crash for a few weeks, I didn't hesitate. "Of course," I told him. "Your family." He moved in with 2 duffel bags and an attitude, the kind that carries the smell of trouble long before it arrives. But Dad's face lit up like Christmas. He'd always been softer on Evan. "He's just figuring things out," he'd say. Whenever my brother skipped jobs or borrowed money, he never returned. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the one who never needed anything, the invisible one. At first it was fine. Evan helped around the house for a week, maybe 2. Then his friends started coming by. Music shook the walls. Mom pretended not to notice. Dad laughed along, calling it good to have some life in the place again. I remember the day I noticed the first shift. I came home from work and saw my piggy bank, the ceramic one I'd had since I was 12, open on my dresser. A few bills missing. Evan brushed it off. "I just borrowed it, sis." Dad said it was fine. Dad didn't deny it. He just shrugged. "He'll pay you back. Don't make a big deal." It wasn't about the money. It was about what it meant. That somehow, in this house, I was the one expected to give, and he was the one allowed to take. Still, I swallowed my frustration. I told myself peace was worth more than pride. Then came the laundry room conversation, the moment that split everything wide open. But before that night, there were small humiliations that paved the way, like when Dad introduced Evan as the son who's helping us out lately at a neighborhood barbecue, while I stood there holding the tray of food I'd cooked, or when Mom asked me to just sleep downstairs for a night or 2 while Evan sorted things. Those nights stretched into weeks. Even the neighbors started noticing. "Didn't your brother just move in?" one of them asked. "He seems comfortable." I smiled tightly. "He's family," I said. But inside, resentment was growing, thick and suffocating. I'd lie awake at night, listening to the thump of music upstairs, the laughter, the footsteps in my old room. And then I'd hear Dad's voice, muffled through the walls. "She'll understand. She always does." That was when I realized understanding was just another word for obedience in that house. Still, I tried to keep my balance. I threw myself into work, stayed late at the office, took on extra projects. My boss, Karen, noticed. "You okay, hun?" she asked one night as I filed receipts under flickering fluorescent light. "Just tired," I said with a smile. But exhaustion wasn't the word. It was erosion. Each small injustice chipped away at something inside me, until the night Dad told me to move into the laundry room and I finally hit the bottom of silence. That was the moment I stopped waiting for their approval. That was the night the version of me who kept the peace died quietly. After that night, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like I was squatting in someone else's basement, paying rent in silence. The laundry room became my world. A concrete floor, humming machines, the faint scent of detergent clinging to the air. I set up a small cot beside the dryer, tucked my clothes into a plastic bin, and told myself it was temporary. But deep down, I knew temporary meant until I broke. Evan didn't waste time marking his territory. My old room became his headquarters. Piles of clothes on the floor, game consoles plugged into every socket, my framed photos shoved into a drawer. He even started inviting friends over for late-night parties, while Dad laughed along upstairs. One morning, I came up for coffee and found Evan sitting in my spot at the kitchen table, my mug in his hand. "Morning, sis," he said, flashing that infuriating grin. "You want me to wash your laundry while I'm at it?" Dad chuckled. "Be nice, Evan." But there was no humor in it, only dominance disguised as banter. I quietly poured my coffee and went back downstairs. At work, I started carrying the weight of home with me. The headaches, the sleepless nights, the way my chest tightened whenever my phone buzzed. It was always a message from Mom asking me to be patient, or Dad reminding me that Evans had it rough. That phrase became the family anthem, a song that excused every one of his choices. The pressure built slowly, like steam behind a locked door. Then came the smear campaign. It started small, whispers between relatives. "She's been distant lately," one aunt said. "I think she's jealous of Evan finally turning things around." Turning things around? He didn't even have a job. When I confronted Dad, he crossed his arms, jaw tight. "You've been cold to him," he said. "You need to be more supportive." I gave him my room. I shot back. "What more do you want from me?" "Respect," he said sharply. "This attitude isn't who you are." Attitude. That word hit harder than any slap. I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. The weeks blurred. My face grew pale, my eyes tired. I'd catch myself staring at my reflection in the washing machine door. Distorted, swirling, unrecognizable. And then one night, as I folded laundry near midnight, a voice came from behind me. "You shouldn't have to live like this." It was Mrs. Collins, our neighbor from next door. She'd come by to drop off a package that had been delivered to her house by mistake. She stepped into the room, taking in the cramped space, the thin mattress. The way I flinched when I heard footsteps upstairs. Her eyes softened. "Sweetheart," she said quietly, "this isn't love. This is control." No one had ever said it out loud before. I felt my throat tighten. "It's just complicated." She shook her head. "Complicated is when people disagree. This is when they take advantage because they know you won't fight back." Something about her words cracked through the fog I'd been living in. Before she left, she pressed a folded note into my hand. "If you ever need a place to stay, my door's open. Don't wait until you forget how it feels to be free." After she left, I stood there for a long time, holding that piece of paper. It wasn't about needing a place. It was about knowing someone finally saw me. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without the machines running. Just silence, heavy and real. Because for the first time, I realized I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't alone. That was the first time someone reminded me I wasn't alone. It was a Saturday morning when everything boiled over. I came upstairs to grab my work folder, the one I always kept in my old desk, which was now buried beneath Evan's mess. When I opened the door, I froze. My documents were scattered across the floor. Invoices, pay stubs, and a bank statement I'd accidentally left in the drawer. Evan was sitting on the bed smirking. "You've been saving a lot, huh?" I felt my pulse spike. "Why are you touching my things?" He shrugged. "Dad said I could look through the drawers." "This house is ours, remember? Ours." That word echoed in my head like a taunt. I snatched the papers from his hands, and for a split second, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Not because he thought he'd gone too far, but because I finally wasn't staying quiet. Later that evening, Dad called a family meeting. Evan sat beside him, arms crossed like he was the victim. Mom avoided my eyes, her hands trembling around a cup of tea. Dad's tone was rehearsed, calm in the way only control can sound. "We've been talking," he began. "It's not working like this. The tension, the disrespect, you've been making things difficult." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Because I want a door instead of a washing machine next to my bed?" Dad's face hardened. "Don't get sarcastic." "We've decided you need a break from this house. Evan's trying to rebuild his life, and your energy is making that impossible." I stared at him, speechless. "A break? You mean you're kicking me out?" "It's not like that," he said quickly. "You can stay with your cousin for a while, maybe focus on yourself." Mom's eyes filled with guilt, but she stayed silent. And that silence said everything. Something inside me cracked, but not in the way they expected. I didn't beg or argue. I just nodded slowly, stood up, and walked to the laundry room. They thought they'd cornered me, but they didn't know what I had. When I moved downstairs months ago, I'd started documenting everything. Photos of missing cash, screenshots of texts, even a recording of one of Dad's rants about how I owed them for everything they'd ever done. And the best part? My landlord, Mrs. Collins's son, had helped me set up a savings plan under my own name. Every paycheck, I'd been quietly transferring part of my income into a separate account, in a property he managed, a small apartment, under my name. The very thing Dad thought he controlled, my money, had already become my escape route. That night, while the house slept, I packed. My few clothes, my work folders, the ceramic piggy bank that still bore a faint crack from when Evan first pried it open. When I stepped out into the night air, I looked back at the house one last time. The glow from the windows, the faint laughter drifting from upstairs. All of it felt like a set in a play that had finally ended. I drove to Mrs. Collins's building just before dawn. She opened her door in her robe, smiling softly when she saw me holding my bags. "I knew you'd come," she said. For the first time, I let myself breathe, but peace didn't last long. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from Dad. "You'll regret this. Don't think you can walk away that easily." I stared at the screen, pulse pounding. He wasn't done. Not yet. And as much as it scared me, I realized neither was I. They thought they still had control. They didn't. Leaving home should have felt like relief. But within days, peace turned into battle. It started with phone calls. First Mom, tearful. "Why are you doing this to your father?" she whispered, like I'd broken something sacred. Then Aunt Lila called, repeating the script Dad must have written for her. "Family doesn't walk out, dear. You should apologize before he changes his mind about helping you." Helping me. The irony burned. By the end of the week, the whispers had spread. Twisted versions of the truth, carried by cousins and neighbors. She stormed out after Dad offered to pay her bills. She's gotten greedy. She's disrespectful. Rumors, polished lies meant to make me look ungrateful. But I didn't argue. I documented every text, every voicemail, every false accusation. I kept them in a digital folder labeled Laundry Files. The name a dark inside joke to myself. Meanwhile, Life in my new apartment was simple but honest. I had a tiny kitchenette, sunlight spilling through the window every morning, and silence, the kind that didn't judge. Mrs. Collins checked in often, bringing muffins and advice. "They'll try to pull you back," she warned. "That's what control looks like when it starts slipping." She was right. A week later, Dad showed up outside my building. He didn't ask to come in, just stood there, arms folded. "You think you can just walk away from family? After everything we've done?" "I didn't walk away," I said quietly. "You pushed me out." His face tightened. "You're embarrassing us. Evan's telling people you've gone unstable. You need help." I almost laughed. "Help? You mean silence." That night, I saved our entire conversation, my phone recording every word. Something was changing inside me. I wasn't scared anymore. I was focused. I stopped reacting, started planning. I met with my boss, Karen, and told her everything. The harassment, the manipulation, the threats. She leaned back in her chair, eyes sharp. "You've been living through that and showing up here every day?" I nodded. "Then it's time they see who they're dealing with," she said. "You're stronger than they've ever admitted." With her help, I started preparing a case. Not a lawsuit, but proof. Proof of financial control, emotional abuse, and the small thefts that had been brushed aside for years. The piggy bank became my centerpiece, the symbol of it all. A cracked ceramic reminder of the day they decided my things, my space, my worth didn't matter. Now it sat on my desk, taped and sealed, with a single folded note inside. "You can't break what you didn't build." Every time I looked at it, I remembered why I left, and why I wasn't going back. Still, the attacks grew sharper. Evan posted cryptic things online. Some people just can't handle watching others succeed. He shared old photos of us, painting himself as the forgiving brother. Relatives commented hearts and praise, unaware they were applauding a lie. But for every rumor, I gathered a receipt. For every insult, I grew calmer, because deep down, I knew what was coming. The breaking point arrived when Dad sent a letter, official and cruel. He claimed I'd taken family property when I moved out. The piggy bank. He wanted it back. That's when I knew the reckoning was near. This wasn't about the money or even the object. It was about control. The piggy bank had become a symbol of rebellion, proof that I was no longer theirs to own. So I didn't hide. I didn't block them. Instead, I responded with 4 simple words. "See you in court." The silence that followed was deafening, because this time, they realized the rules had changed. The day of reckoning was coming, and no one could stop it. The courthouse smelled like cold coffee and old paper, the kind of place where truth and lies both waited for their turn to speak. I sat at the table, my hands steady, the piggy bank wrapped in cloth beside me. Across the room sat my father and brother, the same smug pair who'd once told me I didn't belong in my own home. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Evan leaned back in his chair, smirking, like he was still the golden child who could charm his way through any storm. Their lawyer was talking fast, tossing around words like family misunderstanding and sentimental property. He claimed the piggy bank was a family heirloom that I'd taken without permission. But I wasn't there to argue over a ceramic pig. I was there to show the world what it stood for. When it was my turn, I stood, calm, deliberate. "Your Honor," I began, "this isn't about a piggy bank. It's about years of financial manipulation, theft, and emotional coercion." The lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge raised a hand. "Let her speak." I opened the folder I'd brought, color-coded tabs, dates, and screenshots, every transaction, every message, every time my father approved Evan taking money for the family. Then came the recording, Dad's voice echoing through the speakers. "She owes us. Everything she has came from me." The courtroom went silent. Evan's smirk faltered. Dad's jaw clenched. "Mom, sitting in the back row, covered her mouth. I let the words linger before continuing. That was the night I realized I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was their investment, their scapegoat. The judge looked from me to my father. Do you deny this? Dad's voice cracked. She's twisting things. I was angry. Angry enough to let your son steal from her? Angry enough to evict her from her bedroom? He didn't answer. I placed the piggy bank on the table. The sound of ceramic against wood echoed like thunder in that silent room. This was mine since I was 12, I said. When it broke, I fixed it. When they took from me, I saved again. And when they told me I wasn't enough, I built a life they couldn't control. The judge leaned forward. Do you have proof of ownership? Yes, I said, opening the folded note I'd kept inside it. My handwriting stared back. You can't break what you didn't build. A simple line, but it said everything. Evan shifted uncomfortably, his arrogance unraveling. She's making us look like monsters, he muttered. Dad snapped, Stop talking. For the first time, their unity cracked in public. The judge exhaled slowly. I've seen many family disputes. This one isn't about property. It's about control. And it ends today. The ruling was brief, but powerful. My independence recognized, their harassment documented, a restraining order granted. When it was over, I gathered my things and turned to face them. Evan's eyes were red, not from guilt, but from losing. Dad looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. I took one step closer and spoke softly, so only they could hear. I don't want apologies. I want change. And then I walked out. Outside, the autumn air felt sharp and clean. The courthouse doors swung closed behind me with a satisfying thud. Mrs. Collins was waiting by the steps, her smile calm and proud. You did it, she said. I nodded, eyes stinging but steady. Yeah, I whispered. I did. The sun broke through the clouds just then, washing everything in gold. And in that moment, I realized the silence I used to fear had become my freedom. The weeks after the hearing felt strangely quiet, not the tense kind of silence that used to hang in that old house, but the kind that felt earned. For the first time in my life, I woke up without checking if someone needed me. No slammed doors, no shouting from upstairs, no subtle guilt woven into breakfast conversations. Just sunlight spilling through my window and the faint hum of the city below. Freedom didn't roar. It whispered. I started filling my apartment with little pieces of myself again. A thrifted armchair, a bookshelf filled with second-hand novels, a photo of me at the beach, hair tangled from wind and laughter. The first picture in years that didn't include anyone else. The piggy bank sat on my windowsill now, its cracked surface patched with gold paint, a technique I learned from a video called kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing what's broken with gold instead of hiding the cracks. It felt poetic. The damage wasn't erased. It was honored. Meanwhile, the family I'd once revolved my life around began to crumble in slow motion. Evan's charm ran out once people realized his version of events didn't match the evidence. Relatives who'd whispered behind my back started going quiet. He bounced from couch to couch, always with a new excuse. Dad retreated into pride, too proud to apologize, too broken to face what he'd done. Mom tried calling a few times. I answered once. Her voice was small. He's not doing well. You know how he gets when things don't go his way. I hesitated, then said gently, Maybe now he'll learn. She sighed, like she understood but couldn't admit it. You sound different, she said. I am, I replied. Finally. I didn't hang up angry. Just done. Some nights I'd sit by the window with tea watching the streetlights flicker, and I'd think about how strange it was, how losing everything they said I needed gave me everything I'd been missing. Peace, clarity, self-respect. At work, things blossomed too. Karen promoted me to lead accountant. "You've earned it," she said simply. "And not just here, in life." Mrs. Collins stopped by often, still bringing muffins and kindness. "I knew you had it in you," she'd say, eyes glimmering. "It's always the quiet ones who fight the hardest." One afternoon, I opened my window and heard children laughing in the courtyard below. The sound pure, unfiltered. It made me smile, because laughter used to be something that happened around me. Now it came from me. Sometimes I still thought about the girl who once packed her bags in the middle of the night, shaking, afraid, whispering apologies for things she didn't do. I wanted to reach back through time and tell her, "You weren't weak. You were surviving. And now you're free." The final piece of closure came one weekend when I decided to visit my old neighborhood. Not the house, just the street. I parked at the end of the block and watched the windows from afar. The paint was peeling. The garden, once perfectly trimmed, was overgrown. For the first time, I didn't feel resentment. I felt distance. A clean, peaceful kind of distance. I reached into my bag and pulled out a photo I'd found while unpacking. A picture of me and Evan as kids, sitting in the yard, covered in dirt and laughter. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize us. Then I smiled softly and placed it in the trash bin beside me. Some things aren't meant to be framed anymore. As I drove away, the sun dipped low, bathing the sky in shades of orange and rose. The air smelled like rain, and somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. If they blamed you, used you, or drained your kindness, this is for you. You're not cold for walking away, not selfish for choosing peace, not broken for needing space to heal. Some families only see your worth when they can't control it anymore. You owe them nothing. Not silence, not forgiveness, not your future. The moment you stop surviving and start living, that's your real beginning.